So, we talk about it all the time, how the economy is the #1 issue in the polls for voters. You would think we'll hear a decent amount about it tonight. Doug Flynn joins us as he does this at this time many days from Flynn Zito Capital Management. I don't think they'll get into the stock market. Oh, you never know. Trump likes to talk about the stock market, but the economy. We have a screen that we've showed a number of times on the show that kind of goes through, here's the Harris plan, here's the Trump plan. We can put it up now. But the point is, they're very different. There's, what Harris wants to do in terms of expanding some of these tax credits, the price gouging thing you and I have talked about. How do you define that? The subsidy for housing gets a lot of attention. Trump's big thing really is the tax cuts, making them permanent. You get a lot of people, and I don't know, it was kind of your profile, Doug. People work, that I know that work on Wall Street and other places. I'm not assigning any thoughts to you. I'm just saying, people that they don't love Trump. They've known him for years in New York or known of him, but they love the tax cuts, and that's their rationale. So what would you say about that in terms of his economic plan? Let's start with him.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously, if you continue on with what we've had this whole time, we've had those even through the current administration.
Yep.
It's a knowable. You know exactly what you're going to get. You already know how to plan around that. And the big takeaway for this is the certainty of that. We know exactly what to expect and how to react accordingly. It's always the uncertainty that makes people nervous because you just don't know exactly how it's going to shake out in those changes. They're going to make one change versus another. And so in this case, it's kind of more of the same. And the real issue is they're going to talk about how much that's going to balloon the deficit, but that really hasn't, the revenue, it was more than expected. So it's really never the revenue problem side of things. It's always on the spending side of things, and they both want to spend trillions of dollars.
Right. Yeah, that was never Trump's economic strength. It was cutting down the spending. Again, it was the tax cuts that people liked, but he did spend. Never was really cutting back on spending at all when he was president. Now, for Harris, what Trump most likely will try to do is paint her as much as he can as being associated with Biden, right? And when you talk about the economy, put up the inflation chart, guys, if you have it for a second, because you're going to go back to the Inflation Reduction Act and say, this was heard, the deciding vote on some of this key legislation, and see peak inflation at 9% in that chart, and now obviously it's come down under 3%. What about assigning blame? We were coming out of COVID, right? And then there's a back and forth on this. This last piece of legislation, some say, was too much. How much inflation blame deserves to be pinned on the Biden-Harris administration?
I think a fair amount, only because of the amount of stimulus that they threw out there. And as anybody in economics knows, is that if you flood a bunch of money and it's going to drive up inflation. And so when Biden took over and into office, the inflation rate, the CPI was about 1.4%, I think is the number. Right. And although it hit a high of 9.1, it's now under 3. And we're going to get some numbers tomorrow that are probably even going to be better than the numbers we had last time. But the fact of the matter is they're higher than they were when Trump left office. And what I think he's going to point to is, even though the average amount of inflation cumulatively over Biden was 20%, there are things like car insurance, which are up well over 50%. So there's a lot of items that don't fit into the CPI basket that people are feeling.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
Even though the numbers,
you feel it more,
even though
by
the numbers
the way,
are decent,
than say the stock market and other things sometimes, because the Biden, would have a pretty good argument. Show the stock market. I think we have a 5-year chart to say, for all you guys don't like what I've done with the economy, market's done really well, right? People are making a lot of money in their 401ks, and maybe some of that spending's helped with growth. That would be their rebuttal to what you just said, I presume.
I think so. And the numbers are with the market. While Biden maintained a double-digit, which is the historical average return of the market, Trump's numbers are a little bit better. They're about 3 to 4% better per year average compounded. People feel better now because the total value is higher. It's compounded on top of it. I think the real numbers they're not going to get into is how much better the bond market has done under Trump versus Biden. The bond market returns are negative because essentially they had to keep raising up interest rates, and that drove down the bond prices.
I think you're right. I don't think they will get into that at all. A couple of times, Trump said, I love debt or something like that, so you never know. All right, Doug, thank you, my friend.